In 2018, Oprah Winfrey, when giving her acceptance speech for an award that she had achieved, said these words: "Speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have." I'd like to address that. Before I do, I wanted to remind you that this evening there is prayer at 7:30 as well as every Tuesday morning. And then this coming Sunday, we meet at 3 p.m. and we're going to continue with our topic on countering Satan's schemes. And we're going to be looking at particularly what is needed on behalf of the believer to do that. We've looked at who Satan was, his activity, his aim, which is to sow deception. He is a father of lies, of course. And so this week we're going to be focusing on mostly how to counter that. So join us at 3 p.m. and let's come prepared to receive God's word and to worship God with his people. Bring your children. Children receive a worksheet from toddlers. They receive a worksheet where they can color during the gathering, and you're also free to bring your toddler into the lobby if they need a break. There is a nursery for mothers with infants, and for children of the grade 1 to grade 6, we give out a worksheet where they can actually follow the message and answer certain questions and write whatever they pick up throughout the message, and you can discuss that with your child when you get home. And we also make a photocopy, and I read their responses. I'm always excited to read their responses. So don't leave your children behind, leave your spouse with your children. Just come together as a family and let's worship the Lord this coming Sunday at 3 p.m. And parents of infants and toddlers, you've received an email last week from Melissa. Please respond to that email. It's concerning help and volunteers that are needed for the Christian Education Department, in particular the Children's Ministry, as of September. We have the Movement Seminary. That's a seminary, basically, that is available to anyone. Bible college courses given to anyone who is interested. There is a small fee. There is also required reading. It is in present studying. What you need to do is simply visit our website. More information is on our website, and I'm sure that many of you are already signed up, and others are still inquiring and thinking about it. Please do visit the website, and it'll give you all the information that you need. Now let's look at this topic, shall we? And by the way, we want to thank God for all of you who've been giving faithfully. And if you haven't given towards missions in your previous givings in these past 2 weeks, please remember to do so. We want to continue supporting those who are on the mission field. In the book of Judges, we have an expression that occurs twice. It occurs in Judges 21:25 and again in 17 verse 6, where it says, "Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." And that's an interesting expression. This refers to God's people who, after being delivered from slavery in Egypt and then brought through the wilderness for 40 years, and eventually God led them into the promised land, and they were used by God to drive out nations that had become wicked and evil in many ways, driving them out and then occupying that land given to them by God. Not because they earned it, not because they were a good people, but because they were chosen and they were given laws that would be an expression of God's righteousness, so that they would follow these laws and be a light to the nations around them. But in time, and not soon after they occupied this land called Canaan, Israel as a nation slipped into debauchery. They broke God's laws. They turned their backs on the God of Israel. They began to worship the stars, the sun, the moon, pagan gods that are basically no gods, and they began to hurt each other. So one thing led to another, and so what you see is a nation that was at its prime, blessed in so many ways, prosperous, powerful, protected, now becomes a nation that is poor, that is unprotected because God can't protect disobedience, a nation that basically felt that they could do what they want. And they did whatever was right in their own eyes. Whatever they felt was right, they did it. So if it was sexual immorality, like every other nation, they just engaged in it. If it was hurting each other or whatever, becoming greedy and selfish and self-centered and so forth, they just engaged in it, and they began to just do whatever they felt was right. Now, if had you gone to that nation and you would have asked them as a people, so listen, tell me your story. And they would say, well, we were oppressed, we were slaves in Egypt, and they were mistreating us, and they're just abusive, and we were just having just an awful time. We could not be free to be ourselves. But here, now we are free to be ourselves. We're going to speak truth to power. And whatever we want to do, we will do. That's not speaking truth to power at all. That's obviously a story. And there's an opinion that follows the story. But not truth. Truth doesn't vary based on our story. So all of us have a story. All of us have sorrow. All of us have pain. All of us have been exploited one time or another to some degree or other. All of us have been confronted with the evil of our heart. But it isn't our story that determines truth. Our story is a story. I understand when Oprah Winfrey said those words, she said it in view of the sexual predation that was happening in Hollywood and how many women were not free to share their pain and what they had gone to and how they had been sexually abused. And so she was saying that to give them encouragement to share their story. But it's their story. It's not truth to power. Truth is not unchanging. My story is different from your story, which is different from someone else's story. Everyone has a story. But my story does not determine truth. My story can only bring about an opinion of what I should be doing. But then I've got to take that opinion and I have to then measure it against something that is objectively true. True. And what is truth? Well, God's word is truth, according to Jesus. Your word, Jesus said, is truth. And nothing else is absolutely true. And when a nation like Israel turns its back on God's laws, then we find ourselves in mayhem. We're just wreaking havoc and hurting each other. And that is what is happening today in the Western world. We've turned our backs to God's word. We basically have said, we know what truth is because I've been oppressed, I've been hurt, I've been taken advantage of, I've been exploited, and I have pain. I don't feel that I've been treated fairly. I've gotten the short end of the stick. And these are expressions that are being used. And because of that, I am going to speak truth to power, and I'm going to fight my own way and do whatever I believe is right. Doing right what is in my own eyes. That's why people do what they do. You say, yesterday there was a shooting. Was it the day before that? There was a shooting in East End of Montreal. And 5 people were shot. Shot by individuals who were angry because they were hurt, they were exploited, there's pain in their lives. And so they did what was right in their own eyes. They took matters into their own hands and they shot those who they felt needed to be shot. Of course, there were some innocent bystanders that were equally shot. And this is what happens when we do things what is right in our own eyes because we feel that we've been exploited because there's pain in our lives. And that we feel that is true. What is true is my story, and therefore I'm going to deal with my pain in my way. Well, you have a story, but dealing with your pain in your way is not the answer. And it's an opinion, but it's not the truth. So what is the truth? The truth is in God's word. So God's word speaks about forgiveness. God's word speaks about God dealing out vengeance or meting out justice in his time. God's word speaks about the day of judgment. God's word speaks about that we're all accountable for our actions. One day we will appear before his throne and we will give an account of what we've done and how we've treated each other. Truth is found in God's word, not in handling things my own way. Because handling things my own way is just going to get us into greater trouble. Just because we've been hurt and there's pain and there's sorrow, we've gotten the short end of the stick, does not justify that we can do whatever is right in our eyes. Otherwise, we're going to end up like Israel. And Israel ended up in disarray. It was a nation that was in total chaos. And that is what's happening in the Western world, because we've turned our backs to God's word. And we've decided that we need to take matters into our own hands. Why not simply trust him? Why not turn to him, humble ourselves before him and say, Lord, grant me the grace so that I may answer the pain and confront whatever is happening to me according to your truth and not according to what I believe is right in my own eyes. Lord bless you. We'll see you this Sunday at 3.